This is the 21.5 Show.
You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
Whether you're a professional pilot or want to be one, you're in the right place.
Let's get started.
Join professional aviators Dylan and Max as they talk their experience in the airlines, business aviation, and more.
Life is good.
Industry experts, unique stories, and plenty of fun. This is the 21.5 Show.
Here we go.
What is up, guys? Dylan and Max here. 21.5 podcast. We're back. Dropping an absolute banger.
Max,
tonight.
the tables have turned. You're hosting the show tonight.
Hosting
now it
the
is your
show.
turn to look. Here, I'm going to give you a nice angle. What kind of hotel room am I in?
Oh, that's a Marriott property.
Oh. Wrong.
It's a Hilton?
A Hilton Tapestry Collection.
You're a traitor lately.
No,
You're a Marriott.
dude, I told you. I went on a rant before. That you're on the Hilton app. The key works good on your phone. You can pick your own room.
Great. Maybe they'll sponsor the show.
Yeah. Shout out.
Where do we start? So much to talk about.
Lots to get to today. I think we have to go with, you may recall, my wife, your sister, had a dog named Ramona. And our Ted, who our listeners will remember, had a nickname for Ramona. Do you recall that nickname?
Yeah. The raw dog.
Yes. Ronnie Raw Dog. The term raw dog has come up recently in aviation circles. Would you like to tell the listeners, for anyone that doesn't
I don't know.
know?
That it's really so in case you guys haven't heard of this new thing that people do called raw dogging it on an airline flight, is when you're a passenger, and it's where you just sit there and you do nothing. Like you don't have AirPods in, you don't look at your phone, no iPad, no in-flight entertainment. You just the only thing you're permitted to look at would be the moving map display. And you just stare at it.
Correct. And these guys are posting these videos online, and it's probably a joke. I don't know if it's real.
I think
they're
people are really doing it.
14 hours did the like LA to Rome flight, and it just like shows the thing, and
There's no way, dude. I'm going on a 10-hour flight tomorrow night, and I wouldn't even.
There's no chance.
And then I'm connecting and going on a 1-hour flight, and I won't do it on either of those.
No chance.
You believe that?
And so they just sit there. They just look at the map, and then they like say it's no water or no bathroom break either.
But how funny
know.
would that be if you were deadheading and you just raw dogged it, all deadheads? Just freak everyone out.
Man, I can't even. I'm trying to think of the last flight where I didn't insert some AirPods or some type of.
Oh, I'll tell you the last one when I forgot my AirPods, and then I had to deadhead.
And then what'd you do? Just
raw dogged it.
You're still, but that wasn't like. But you're still like watching something or reading something.
Yeah, I read a book.
These guys are sitting there. You know, it was funny. They shared what was the original raw dogging clip. It was from Seinfeld. No, it was from Curb Your Enthusiasm. And Larry David's sitting next to the other guy on that show. I can't remember his buddy, and I can't remember his name. And Larry's like got his book out, and he's like, "So you gonna read something?" He's like, "No, I'm good." He's like, "It's a 5-hour flight," and he's like, "Yeah, I'm good. Just sit here." He's like, "What?" And that was like what kicked it all off.
But haven't you had that with people? They sit down, they have nothing to do, and you see them, they just grab the in-flight magazine and be like, "Oh, yeah, bro, that's going to hold you over for the whole flight."
And
then they look at it, and then you can tell they're just jonesing to start up a conversation with you.
No, that's the worst.
Yeah, that's a negative.
Especially when you're commuting in uniform.
That's why we are coming up with a solution to this problem.
The commuter vest is just about ready.
Where's our prototype?
It's coming any day.
Is it imminent, would you say?
Mm-hmm.
I got rerouted the other day and ended up deadheading. God, I need that thing.
It's just like, it's so brutal. I think we could have, all right, so what do you want
to... have to wear a tie. Like, then you could just drop the tie in 2 seconds.
Exactly.
And
and everyone was making fun of me for this.
A commuter vest is just a very light, a very packable vest, and you could put it on over your airline hubbub and drop the tie, and then you're just nobody knows who you are.
You look like a finance
incognito.
bro.
Yeah, you look like just a normal idiot.
It's a bro. Yeah, I was doing this 10 years ago. I was made fun of. Ted disowned me. People thought that I was bringing the profession down. Meanwhile, all I was trying to do is just kind of stay incognito. That's it. But okay, so man, I got so much that I want to visit with you here on this. Okay, so one, do you want to issue some type of raw dogging challenge to commuters?
No, dude, it's already bad.
Okay, all right, we're gonna set that aside. There's no challenge.
We don't want to.
Two, what is the most bizarre conversation you've had with a passenger while in uniform? I would love to hear from our listeners, like what they've gotten. What do you do? Like, do you start telling lies? What's the temptation there?
You mean like in the back on a flight?
Yeah, like you're deadheading, you're commuting, you're in uniform.
I don't talk.
Somebody
to
strikes up a conversation. I just want to. Somebody's got a good story.
I refuse to engage.
I understand, but I'm asking our listeners. Somebody's done something.
Yeah, I'm sure, but
we're gonna get a good story there. Okay. Now, third thing that I want to talk about this is very important. We've been mulling over this for a while.
Raw dog.
Here it is, right. Third thing. What is the pilot equivalent of a raw dog? Like, let's say that we're going to raw dog a flight while being the person that's flying. What's that equivalent?
I think the equivalent of raw dogging a flight would be like not looking at your iPad for stuff.
Okay, I'm going to even push it. As not even entertaining yourself. What if you just didn't use VNav for the whole flight?
No VNav.
No VNav.
That'd be good. That'd be pretty funny. That'd be a lot of work. Can you imagine flying one of these arrivals?
Oh, you're using like the 60-1 rule. And
and you'd have to keep putting the altitude selector for each bottom of each cross, you know?
Wow. Could that be it?
Yeah, no, dude, raw dogging a flight would be not using VNav and only figuring out your descent profile, like with rules of thumb or longhand. With a pen, I would allow a pencil or pen and paper. That's it.
But like, and you need to do it in front of so the other pilot can see what you're doing. And it'd be harder for you too, right? Because
no auto throttles. You got to get the auto throttles out too.
Okay, so and maybe people listening don't know what VNav is exactly. Vertical navigation that you can couple that'll cross all your altitude crossings and do everything.
And speeds, if you have auto throttles.
And speeds, depending on the plane, what you got. But your VNav is different than mine, right? Because I set a degree, right? So I'm like, I do a 3-degree VNav. But doesn't the Boeing do it differently?
Well, the Boeings can do whatever software you have, and they'll do, that's called geopath descent, right? Where
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, and so just ours at Southwest are programmed to do idle thrust descents.
So could you even really calculate that?
No.
Beforehand, but does it know what like your rate or your angle is or anything?
No, it doesn't. There's nowhere to see what the angle is. You can see what the rate is in a certain page, but no, it's not. There's no. It just does.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah, but which obviously is works great if it's 2 a.m. and you're leading the pack or there's no one else around. But when you have the speed change or whatever, it's kind of funny because when you fly the idle thrust VNav and then like say they ask you to increase speed to 300 knots, like from 280 or something, right? Well, if you put 300 in there, it will level off because that's a steeper descent, right? So it'll wait and then then invariably what happens? Then they'll be like, okay, now slow to 250, right?
Yeah. And
now the only way you out of that is speed brakes. Because you're on a 300 knot idle thrust descent. So, the ironic thing is when like on an arrival, if I get a speed increase, I disconnect the auto throttles and just add thrust.
Look at you.
because then invariably when they slow you again, then you can just re-engage the auto throttles and go back to what you were doing.
Because you know it's coming. Yeah.
Yeah. You
Okay.
know it's coming.
So it's the
It's kinda
VNav.
funny.
So that's the
The
challenge.
automation
The challenge is to skip VNav, raw dog a flight.
And auto throttles. No VNav, no auto throttles.
Oh. Okay. There's gonna be like 9 ASAP reports. These guys on this podcast told me.
FAA, NTSB. We've become aware of this raw dogging trend amongst professional pilots.
Oh my god.
All right.
That would be so good. All right. That's enough of that. We all enjoy the clips. If you see a good raw dogging clip, send it to us. It's funny. We can all laugh together. Lots to get to today, Max.
Quickly.
Yeah, we got a lot to do. This isn't a late night podcast, which if you're a regular listener, you know, we only have a Max for so long before
I'm on vacation, baby.
Yeah. All right. Should we just jump right into book club? You ready?
Let's do it.
Chapter 6, book club. I thought an extremely relevant chapter with a lot of stuff that still applies today.
Ruthless airline business at its best.
It really is. It starts off talking about the Sabre system, which you and I both have used in the past.
Change decks.
Change decks, change res. Yeah. HI3, exactly.
HI3. What was an HI3?
Did you check
I
your
forgot
HI3?
about that. What is that?
It was like
What was your
basically
schedule? HI4?
Well, there was different ones. It was like HI3 was maybe your current, and then HI4 was your previous.
Oh my god!
There was an HI6.
This was all like a text-based.
It was like
system.
MS-DOS. You just had to know these codes you would type in, and it would tell you. It was terrible. But back in the day, in the 70s and 80s, this was called Sabre, the system that American Airlines invented, and this was revolutionary, right? And so they developed this system so that travel agents could book travel, and then what they did is they got it in all of the travel agents' hands.
It was essentially the only way to book air travel without making a phone call.
And then somehow,
but it wasn't just on American Airlines; it was on all of the airlines. It had the whole.
And
schedule.
that's my question: you could book any airline flight on this, but I don't know how the airlines, like other airlines, went along with this. Like, oh, American Airlines created this software that we can all book tickets on, and everyone just seemed to be fine with that. Like that was weird. I don't know if I really understand how that worked.
Well, I think it would be one of those things where it's an evolution of technology, right? Where it's like, okay, well, the flights, the travel agents are just going to book on the system rather than call our airline. So we have to be on the system, I would think, but I don't know.
Yeah, but then invariably what happened in the chapter was like American was in control of the system, and they go, oh, it turns out that the top result is the one that most people book. So let's cook the books so that an American flight is the one that pops up as the, they had all these, the algorithm was supposed to tell you like what was the fastest, most efficient flight, and all these parameters. And they basically just figured out how to tweak the software to show you, that the American flight was the best one. And it just reminds me of like, we're still doing this same stuff today, like how often are we still seeing like, oh, the AI you use, what company, programs it, and the Google search, who's paying the most for the ad recognition to get you the top result. And it's the same stuff. We've been doing it for 40 years.
I know.
Really.
It's pretty funny.
When you boil it down. So pretty crazy there when they start talking about the power of the analytics and the computer systems that the airlines figured out.
So that was that. And then they kind of got a little bit, they were doing it right. Like they were towing the line, I think. They could have got away with it, and then they got a little aggressive. And Crandall driving the ship, he is no mercy,
ruthless.
Yeah, he's ruthless. He'll do whatever. So to the competitors or even his own employees, in this chapter they talked about the infamous American Airlines B scale.
Oh,
and so some of these other airlines had then started a new airline, like we talked about with New York Air, right? That Texas International started or whatever. And so then they hired all these new employees, new pay rate. Everyone was junior, so they were on the bottom of the pay scale, blah, blah. And it was a way to get around these labor costs of these legacy carriers. Well, Crandall thought about doing that. And he's like, no, that won't work because, we're part of American is the people. So he goes, I know. We'll just start a new B scale within our airline, and we'll just pay. And he called it the market rate, the market rate group. And so these new people, after a certain date, pilots, flight attendants, everybody was hired at this new market rate group, which is post deregulation, is what he was saying, and it was less money than the other people doing the exact same job.
Yeah. So if you ever hear about B scale, that's what it is. I think it's a great chapter to read to understand, like, that's the kind of stuff. And then here's the most interesting part of that chapter, Max, was how quickly every union was like, yeah, no problem, sign us up.
So members of the pilots union were even less difficult to convince.
Yeah.
A huge proportion of the pilots at American had been hired at one time in the explosion of flying that accompanied the onset of jets in the mid-1960s. By the early 1980s, many of the members of that bulging pilot class were still stuck in the co-pilot seat. Crandall and his aides demonstrated that as American bought more planes, the fleet expansion made possible by hiring new employees at cheap wage scales, these veteran pilots would finally be thrust into the captain's seat, getting big pay raise in the process. Crandall's task was made even easier by the fact that the pilots at American, though unionized, were not part of the Airline Pilots Association, which represented pilots at all other union airlines. Dealing with a distant national leadership in Washington would have made B scales a much harder sell. So even the pilots got on board. They're like, yeah, this is great because expansion is good. And
yeah, we worked our butts off to build this company.
Yeah,
we should be rewarded. And this is why, and people are not going to like me saying this. This is going to be unpopular. This is why I think the single pilot airliner thing is going to slide right through. Oh, we're paying you $300 an hour right now to be captain of this airplane. We're going to make that $600 an hour, but it's going to be one pilot. And the guys there that are already there will be like, oh, sounds good to us.
Yeah, have you seen that like short on Instagram or whatever where it's like a baby crying and then it's like how to get pilots to stop complaining and the guy walks up and gives him $100 bill and the baby's like, what? And stops crying right away. Like that's
exactly.
Let's be honest.
That's it.
You know?
And that's what I see is like, oh, okay, cool. Well, we're going to pay you guys the same. So we'll, the crew costs will stay the same hourly, but it's just going to be one guy instead of two. And then they'll find the money, the number, and then everyone will be like, well, I'm already on board. So sounds good. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I don't know. Other interesting takeaways from that chapter, obviously Braniff, they talked about crumbling. I think it was the first airline post deregulation that went bankrupt.
Like actually fold and stop operations.
And it just went in to describe like the brutal price wars that these airlines go through and how like nobody was making any money. And even Crandall called them and they recorded it. And he's like, hey, we both need to raise our fares tomorrow.
Which is highly illegal.
Highly illegal, collusion, anti-competitive, your whole thing. So, but it goes to show why the airlines are so brutal because you can have a new competitor enter the space with lower costs because of, new airplanes or junior workforce, whatever. And they'll cut their prices and basically everyone else has to do the same thing out. And it's just like, who's going to bleed out last?
Yeah. It was also interesting because they also talked about how another like kind of basic rule of the airline business, which is whoever has the most flights from a city gets a disproportionate share of the passengers. Yep. Frequency enhanced convenience, and the convenience of flying the day of your meeting, not just the night before or whatever, being able to get home earlier. And that's always been always a big thing is the frequency, right?
Yep, exactly. And I remember when we were flying at the regional airlines, that was the whole thing. It's like, well, we could run 3 737s a day, or we could run 6 RJs.
Yeah.
So we could have hourly service if we did a smaller airplane. So it's funny to read, and there's the principles are the same.
There's a good story in here too about the old days of Southwest when there was a labor strife at Southwest Airlines and Herb Kelleher was out to dinner and drinks with a group of pilots, and the drinks had been numerous enough to dull Kelleher's wits. So when the pilots offered to fetch his brand new car from the hotel parking lot and meet him out front, he saw no reason to decline their kindness. As he emerged from the hotel, there were 4 pilots standing at the corners of his 12-cylinder S-Class Jaguar, each one relieving themselves on a tire. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's not bad. That's the worst. That's as bad as it gets there. But yeah, the chapter does go on to talk a little bit more about Southwest labor relations, leadership. It's a really good chapter. I don't know if we have time to dive into all of it, but I don't know.
That's why you got to read the book.
I'm encouraged. You know, Max, when you first proposed this idea of like, hey, let's read through this book, I was like, yeah, it's a great idea, but I don't know if people are going to be into it. But we still get messages from people all the time that are reading along with us and getting a lot out of the book. So it's awesome.
Dude, this book is just such an important history lesson in the airlines, and it gives so much meaning to where we are now. Like,
yeah. And it's cool. We not to give away in a future episode, but we just recently interviewed a union president for one of the major airlines. And guess what book he recommended everybody read? Hard Landing.
Flying the Line, was it?
Yeah. Both. Yeah. Both.
That'll be next. That's the next book club.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually have not read that book.
Me neither.
So we both need to do that. So it's good. Any other takeaways from chapter 6?
And then, ultimately Braniff and it also talks about how the whole Wright Amendment and how Southwest could only fly with the states bordering Texas for a very long time, and how that came to be, and then this ruthless competition that finally shut Braniff down. So
and they mentioned like maybe they suspected American of like booking passengers on Braniff and then canceling them at the last second, and like it was
I wouldn't. During the Crandall era, it seemed like not a lot was off limits. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, they were out for blood. But I'll tell you what, my takeaway from this. I'm sorry, American Airlines. I worked at your regional. I saw a lot of your company culture. American used to be an innovator. They had people like Gary Crandall, like people that were out and doing stuff like that. As our buddy Dave O'Neill used to say, you got to innovate. And it feels like that has gone. It's like it's just not the same. It's like the innovation is gone from a lot of these airlines.
Well, and I would have to think, obviously we never worked there during this era, but I would have to think, the creation of the B scale has got to be culture crushing, right? I mean, you're literally creating animosity and driving a wedge between every employee group. I mean, how pissed would you be if you're flying with a dude who's just going to be getting paid way more
and
than
you guys making it 4 times? Well, then it's short-sighted too, because at some point that the B scale people are going to outnumber
at
the A scale, and then they're just going to vote a new union. So it's like it's a short-term deal. But
it seems
this is why it's important to read this book if you don't know, because you could be tempted at some point to be like, well, we're just getting on the ground floor and, X, Y, Z. And so it sounds like a good deal. Yeah, they don't pay a ton, but, you can kind of understand. Like, it's almost like there's nothing new under the sun at this point. Anything else? We good? Chapter 6?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. That was Chapter 6, Hard Landing. Link is in the show notes if you want to buy that book to follow along. I think you should buy the paperback so that you have the street cred of carrying that thing around and everyone can see you reading it. But do what you will. Maybe even get it from your local library. I don't care. Just read the book. Kindle, whatever you got to do. Let's jump into some reviews and comments, Max. Lots in the pipeline. Why don't you read the first one and I'll read the second?
Love 21Fi. I'm a low-time student pilot, 180 hours, about to get instrument and building towards commercial. I listen/watch multiple aviation podcasts and vlogs, but I must say, yours has a level of professionalism not normally found in the space.
That's the word. Professionalism is definitely the first word.
How real you both are. The quality of production is on point, and it just feels like I went out for a beer with 2 pilot buddies who happen to know way more about aviation than me. Keep up the hard work. I'm a listener for life. P.S. I'm anticipating the update and release of the brood map. You just can't get this type of actionable info anywhere else. Joe in Colorado.
Oh, he meant the cicada brood map that we were talking about when I was finding the cicadas. I'm happy to report I was in Branson, Missouri last week, and I was a little nervous that the cicadas might be out, but it sounds like the brood is kind of dying down. So we might have survived.
We can all sleep easy now,
yeah.
Dylan. Thank you.
Yep.
For the brood update.
Yeah. All right. That was from Joe. Next one is from 767 Cargo Pilot. He says, best podcast for professional aviators. I learned about the 21.5 podcast from my sim partner while I was in initial training at a regional airline 3 years ago. Since then, this has become my favorite podcast. Excellent information from professional pilots who are out there walking the walk. Plus, great guests providing everything from career advice to financial recommendations. A fun and informative podcast for aspiring professional pilots, as well as those already at their dream job. Great job, guys. All right. Thank you, 767 Cargo Pilot and Joe, for the reviews. If you shoot us an email, info@215podcast.com, we will be sure to get you some stickers in the mail. Be sure to include your mailing address in that email.
That's the key.
And I'll do that deal for anyone who writes a review for us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So excited to get into the mailbag for you, Max. Lots to cover. But first, I would be remiss if I did not mention our friends at the Advanced Aircrew Academy. Aircrewacademy.com is their website. You know them. You love them. The producers of some of the best aviation educational content out there. I keep giving away all these future interviews we have, Max, but we just did another one with them on international ops, which will be coming out soon. A wealth of knowledge. They're subject matter experts. We love the way they write their modules by pilots, for pilots. It's entertaining, educational, everything you need for your flight department. Aircrewacademy.com is the website. On to the mailbag.
Hey guys, I'm a broke 600-hour flight instructor living in Las Vegas. Reading the news about all the furloughs and slowdowns has me down as my escape out of my financial hole seems further away. James O'Neill makes for a great therapist and offers a much bigger perspective. At the same time, I can't get enough of the melodic tunes coming from the Furlough Flute. May I please request a Furlough Flute jam session with James? The show slaps, no cap. Mark.
Oh.
Do you
All right,
have
Mark.
that? Do you have that Furlough Flute?
Oh, yeah, we'll get there.
remix?
We'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Absolute gold.
Mark, thank you for the email. We just actually did a jam session with James in the previous episode, so you can go track that one down. And we got into all things on the flute. More flute to come later. Next email. Fellas, I'm not even sure where to begin except by saying thank you. After flying in the Air Force as an F-15E WSO. Do you know what WSO?
Weapons Systems Officer. He's backseater
Okay.
in the F-15.
Okay. And exploring some meaningless post-Air Force careers, I am now in what I call my career 2.0 phase and returning to flying, this time in the right seat. I'm a few years out from being at the airlines, and while I love the journey, you guys add some much-needed laughter and insight. I have a lot to look forward to, for sure, but to be honest, I can't wait to get my hands on the new Briggs & Stratton suitcase. I am going to be zipping through the terminals at breakneck speed. Haha, I had to. In all seriousness, I really do appreciate the value you guys bring to the episode. I have learned a lot from you and look forward to being one of you someday. Thanks for hosting the book club, too. Hard Landing is a must-read if you're going to be a professional pilot. It's pretty interesting to see how far we have come and how some of the crazy antics are showing up at the airlines today. Keep up the great work. P.S. When the time comes, I am definitely going to apply to Eagle Airlines. I will wear that patch proudly. And that's from Gozer. And
Where did this patch come from?
He made this. Do you see this?
He
created this for us. Yeah.
Get you there on time some of the time.
Yeah, he made an Eagle Airlines patch for us. If you don't know what we're talking about, we talked about Eagle Airlines in the last episode with James. So we'll post a picture of that on our social media. But nicely done, Gozer. That is incredible. It makes me want to start in airline with training contracts even more.
Love the show. Thanks for consistently producing awesome content. Forget a dating app. I'm thinking a TV show. Move over Bachelor in Paradise. Bachelor in Base is what America wants to see, Mark.
That was from our dating app that we said where you have to date people in base. Bachelor in Base. One rose. Oh, we got another email from a person named Mark. This is 2 in a row here. Hey, gents, thanks for putting on such an informative and fun-slapping podcast. I love the content, but wanted to express a thumbs up for your awesome cover graphics that are uniquely tailored to each episode. I love the modern yet retro style and think they would make great posters in my hangar or garage. How do you crank those out? Thanks, Mark.
Secret, Mark.
That's
It's one of Dylan and I's many talents, which is also illustrating. So.
Big drawer. Do it on the empty legs there. When I'm raw dogging a flight in the back, and just
if you look closely,
illustrate.
you can see it's actually the back of a release. So
those graphics, I hate to admit it, created by our friends at ChatGPT most of the time, but they're kind of fun. So I'm glad somebody's appreciating them.
It's incredible. It's actually pure magic, as far as I'm concerned.
It's hilarious. Every time we ask it to draw a picture of a pilot, it draws somebody in a pilot uniform, and it's usually pretty good, except the epaulets. It always puts like 9 epaulets on each shoulder. And it's like, I can do 3, I can do 4. Okay, we can work with that. But like, you can't. It used to be like AI couldn't draw fingers and hands. It was always the dead giveaway. Like if you looked at any AI image from like 2023, it was always it had like 6 or 2 fingers, or it was like it could never get it right. And now it's
that's the thing. It's learning.
Yeah. So you know when you're evaluating an AI image generator, get the epaulet uniform generation, and then you can really know how advanced it is.
Hi, Dylan and Max. I've been listening for a couple of years now, and the consistently entertaining and insightful content has been helping motivate me through the CFI grind. As the pendulum seems to have peaked for the moment and maybe starting a swing in the wrong direction, one can only hope that we don't hear too much more of the dreaded Furlough flute, though Gavin's performance inspired me to throw together a brief remixed version, which you will find attached. Please excuse the poor mixing and mastering. I hope you guys enjoy. Keep up the good work, and when the music stops, at least we'll have a flute to listen to. Faking it and still wanting to make it. Anthony. Dude, the only thing that is a masterpiece. Are you queuing that up?
Okay. Yeah.
It's so good, dude.
Anthony sent this to us. This is spectacular. This is a remix of my son Gavin playing the flute.
The recorder.
The recorder, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's the recorder. And this is amazing. Here we go.
Let it do what it do, baby. We up, baby. We up, we up, we up, we up, we And we out here thing, man.
Unbelievable. For folks that don't recognize the voice, that is our boy Donovan Batiste in there. I mean, that's basically, if you want to just summarize our show into like 30 seconds, that's basically it.
So good, dude.
That was amazing. Anthony, send us your address. I think you already did, actually. I'm sending you every piece of merch that we have.
Yeah, that one
Spectacular.
takes the cake.
Spectacular. Next email. Hello, gentlemen. I have been listening for over 2 years and really enjoy your program. Whenever flight training gets boring or tedious, I would imagine the material being taught to me by Andrew Dice Clay.
Oh!
Oh, it had always made it more bearable and brought a smile to my face. He has become the favorite CFI of my imagination, thanks to you both. I did take a break from listening in November because my wife was diagnosed with cancer. Unfortunately, she passed away on Memorial Day. She was 40, and we have 4 children. This is the big reason why I am contacting you. Almost 2 years ago, I returned to general aviation after a 15-year break. After much prayer and with my wife's support, I decided to begin the journey of a second career in aviation at the ripe age of 42. I'm a medically retired police officer from Southern California, and we moved our 4 children to Texas once I retired. I had a back injury that prevented me from wearing a gun belt any longer, and I was able to obtain my first-class medical before I began any training. I did earn my private pilot's license back in 2003, and that was to get my foot in the door in the police helicopter. I did have a part-time fill-in role in our helicopter for 5 years in the non-pilot position. After my career in law enforcement, aviation seemed like my only option that would bring me professional fulfillment. Our family life weighed heavily on our decision, and our children are now 15, 14, 9, and 3. Only with my wife's full support, I proceeded and took out student loans to pay for the training while working full-time. I got my instrument rating, and my wife was diagnosed at the end of my commercial training. I had to cancel a scheduled check ride because she was hospitalized and nearly died in December. She got better, and I was able to get my commercial completed in March. I had my multi-engine training scheduled and ended up having to postpone that because she was placed in hospice in May. I should have my multi-engine in the next month. I have close to 400 hours currently. With the ages of my kids, I am unable to devote the time to becoming a CFI for at least a year. With my wife gone, I have no one to manage our household while I am away working as a pilot. I live in a suburb of Dallas and was wondering if there are any jobs in the area that are family-friendly for a situation like mine. Obviously, my kids are my number one priority right now. In fact, when she passed, I told them and my family I was going to stop pursuing aviation to focus on them. My kids and my in-laws talked me out of that and reminded me that becoming a professional pilot was my wife's ambition for me as well as mine. She thought it was a good lesson for them to see me chase my dreams. I appreciate any feedback. And that's from Joel.
Man, just when you think you have it hard in your flight training, think about Joel. You know, in my time, there's not a lot of jobs that fit that description, but there are some that do. I remember in Arizona, there's one like with the Arizona Department of Transportation, where it was just day trips. They're home every night, like without exception. Like it was a day trip. And and you flew for a company of eye doctors that was day trips only. I mean, that's just here. Those jobs are out there, Joel. So if anybody that's done the grind and been a CFI and done the whole thing and knows how hard that is, think about doing it in Joel's situation. So if anybody has any knowledge in Dallas, unfortunately I don't off the top of my head. Yeah. But there are opportunities out there, Joel. So if any of the listeners know of one, let us know. We will make sure we connect Joel to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What a touching story. Obviously, Joel, we can't imagine all of the things you've had to go through, but certainly admire your desire to stay in the game. And
the only thing I can't think of one. What about Dallas does have a lot of training going on. Yeah. It's something where you could, if you just couldn't find something that would work, you could go work at CAE or flight safety as an instructor, get a type rating, do the whole thing. And because you said it sounded like, for a couple of years or whatever, that might be a move.
That's exactly what I was going to suggest. I think, there could be that unique job where you're just flying day trips or maybe doing something, where your in-laws can fill in for the night or something like that. CFI is probably, I would imagine, going to be the most general job that you could probably build your schedule around. Where you're not going to be gone at night. But yeah, I agree with you. I think being able to get a job at a sim center, like the youngest child.
Because the other thing, dude, think about like certain things. He's got 4 kids. Like, I don't remember the benefits when we were flight instructors, but there's just a lot of other considerations. Yeah. Than when you're 23 or whatever. But see, those places is a legit.
Yeah,
job.
Especially flight safety, Berkshire Hathaway company, like the benefits there are strong. So yeah, I just looked. Yeah, the youngest child was 3. Yeah. So maybe you flight instruct or do something there where you're still actually flying an airplane. Get in as a part-timer. Maybe it's at a simulator training center. Learn an airplane. Do that for a little while. Maybe till the youngest child is a little bit older, and you're building valuable, jet time in the sim and CRM experience, 2-pilot experience. Maybe you're doing some CFI stuff as well. Those are pretty family-friendly jobs in general. And then, some type of like medevac job could potentially be on the table a little bit later on with like a super fixed schedule where you kind of know what you're doing.
Yeah,
but
that's true too.
yeah, that's a tough one. So yeah, I agree with you, Max. I think we lean on our listeners here. You know, Dallas is a huge city for aviation. There's a lot going on. So maybe someone listening to this show knows of a great opportunity for Joel and can help somebody out. I mean, pretty clear
And maybe
through this
not
email.
even something that like right now with 400
Yeah.
hours, but maybe something when he has 1,000
Yeah.
or 1,500 hours.
Something to
that you
work
know of.
toward. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can have a
That'd be-
target in mind, then I think that's super helpful. Where like, oh yeah, maybe you are going to flight instruct or do something else, but if you kind of have a destination in mind, that can be
Yeah.
really helpful.
That
And
could be very motivating.
yeah. So, I mean, I think it's very clear in the email, you know, that Joel is very passionate about aviation.
Yeah,
and
Joel's
so-
not a quitter.
Yeah. So, Joel, we will be thinking about you and your situation, and certainly if anything comes along that we think might be a good fit for you, we will shoot it your way. And definitely salute you for hanging in there. So that was a sobering email, but also I think good to give you perspective, right? You know, like you said, if you think you have it rough because you forgot your AirPods commuting, you know, like there's
Perspective, man.
Yep. A lot of perspective. Okay, that is going to do it for the mailbag, of course, brought to you by Advanced Aircrew Academy. If you want to participate in the conversation with the mailbag, you know what to do. Shoot us an email, info@215podcast.com. Happy to read your email on a future episode. Max, we got to wrap it up with some flight advice, I think. We'll get the listeners out of here on that. If you know about flight advice, you know the flight advice we give on every episode, and that is to our listeners to visit harveywatt.com. You want to know why we tell you to go there? It's to protect yourself from the unknown. Not just the loss of medical insurance that we know that Harvey Watt provides, but like in Joel's situation, it's the life insurance sometimes that is key. Like we just talked about, it can be difficult to be a professional pilot if you've got young kids at home. A life insurance policy, maybe not just for you, but also for your spouse or the primary caregiver of your children, could be crucial if you're a professional pilot. Visit harveywatt.com to see all of the offerings that they provide for professional pilots. Protect your family, protect that little white piece of paper in your wallet. Thanks to Harvey Watt. I have a fun follow-up, Max, from Flight Advice. Not from a Flight Advice person, but from one of our listeners, one of our buddies, one of your old roommates. Remember the military? I think it was a military guy that said they're living in Cincinnati.
Oh yeah,
And they're
he
not
wanted
gonna
live in
move?
Cincinnati, right?
So our boy Chris said that Hawaiian Airlines is opening up a Cincinnati base for cargo for Hawaiian Airlines.
Who would have thought?
So, I mean, obviously, the first thing that you would think of is let's check the Hawaiian Airlines domiciles.
if you're looking for a home base opportunity in Cincinnati, Ohio.
I mean, clearly, you know, how could we have
What a
forgotten
world.
that? But
Well,
yeah.
Good work, CT.
Yeah. So shout out to our boy CT for that one. Okay. You want me to read this to you or you want to read it to me?
I prefer to be read to.
Okay. It's late. I understand that. You don't do PMs normally, so I get
past
that.
my bedtime.
Okay, what up, Dylan and Max? I have been listening to your show since I was a private pilot, and I'm finally in a situation where Eagle Careers can be of service. I am currently a 500-hour CRJFO in the Mormon Air Force, line holder based at home in DFW. I think Mormon Air Force is SkyWest. It's fine enough, but I am getting the feeling of being ready for the next thing, since when I hit 1,000 hours, I am going to be kicked out of my base when they force me to upgrade anyway. Recently, a friend of mine was hired at Calita flying the 747. He encouraged me to apply. One thing led to another, so now I am met with the decision of whether I should leave my regional that has never furloughed in the midst of airlines beginning to stop hiring and even begin to furlough themselves. For a 25-year-old unmarried guy with no kids, this seems like a no-brainer. Go fly the 747, flying rubber dog shit out of Hong Kong. See the world instead of spending another night in the hotel in Lake Charles, Louisiana. When else am I going to get the opportunity to fly a 747? This sounds like a bucket list gig for the time being, at least. Maybe one day I'll settle down and go to Southwest. I am aware of the schedule and specifics, but the only thing that gives me pause is leaving my safe job in the middle of the industry having a turn down. If Kalitta cancels on me and I have to go crawling back to SkyWest, they will make me sign that ridiculous contract requiring 1,800 PIC before I can be cut loose. What do the coaches at Eagle Careers think? Keep up the awesome work, guys. And that's from Ryan. Stats.
Ryan totally knows the answer to this question. He
Yeah.
just needs some reassurance.
That's right. He
2
already
words,
mentioned
Ryan.
the stats. 25
Send
single
it.
DFW.
Send it. Go fly a 7-4. And one day, if you go from SkyWest flying around to Lake Charles and Texarkana and wherever else you go, and then you come to Southwest and you fly around 737, basically doing the same thing, you'll go, God, wouldn't it have been cool to fly to Asia and Middle East and all these in Europe and everywhere? So, don't even, just go to Kalitta. Figure it out. Worst case, you can move back in with your parents.
The training, the training contracts will disappear at some point too, I think. Okay. The only thing I would ask you, Max, 500 hour. He's got 500 hours of CRJ FO time. That's probably enough, right?
Dude, the thing is...
So let's say he's
if you
got
look
2,000 total.
Okay.
With 500 hours jet.
Uh-huh.
You're going to stand... I think you're still going to stand out there.
And not just for the fact that it's cool and it makes your career interesting and you're going to do things that maybe you will never get the opportunity to do again. All that notwithstanding, when you go into Southwest or wherever and you've been flying 747s around the world for the last 5 years, that's a lot more interesting than a SkyWest captain. I'm sorry, it just is. Like, and so
tell you about that.
whether or not you look, there's no reward without risk, and maybe you're accepting a little bit of risk here, but you're in a position to accept that risk, and I say go for it.
I agree. Yeah, I think you go for it. I mean, his concern is, I guess, what happens if if Kalitta cancels. I think 500 hours is enough. 121 turbine time. That's you've gotten something from that job. It's not like you're leaving with 7 hours of jet time.
Yeah, right.
Like you can parlay that if you had to. Send it, Ryan. Do it. And let us know how 747 ground school is.
Let us know how much fuel they hold in the horizontal stabilizer. It's your homework.
Love it. Okay, that was an easy one, I guess.
What else? Anything interesting?
I think that's it.
Anything interesting in your flying journeys lately?
Well, I know you've got some interesting stuff. I'm trying to think. I put one. I got it to land in Hawthorne the other day, which I know you do all the time. Kind of fun. Get the juices flowing a little bit.
Yeah, it's a small airport.
Small, short runway is good. I guess it's about. Is it about the same as Santa Monica?
No, Santa Monica's been chopped down. So. It's
I know. I'm just saying, when you used to be able to fly into
back
Santa
in
Monica.
the day, yeah, kind of. But the thing was,
about
Santa
the
Monica had no taxiway. You just kind of veered off the runway. It was all pavement.
I know. Yeah, that's true.
Remember where this Hawthorne is tight, dude. Even on the taxiway, there's airplanes parked right there. It's kind of a mess.
Like a
It's
twigger.
fun. It's a good restaurant right there. Did you go eat there?
I think we're going to do it before departure. Yeah, that was good. And dude, did you know that there's an Avro airline service out of there?
Yeah. No, it's not an Avro, is it? It's a Dornier.
Is it BA?
No,
is
Dornier.
it a Dornier? Okay.
Dojet.
Some high wing jet. Yeah.
Yeah, the Dojet. Yeah,
Very
Isn't
cool.
that funny?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's really making a comeback.
So making a comeback, and then so I got the 2-for-1. I feel like, are these the best two visual approaches in Southern Cal? The Hawthorne landing and then the brownfield visual around the mountain.
Over the mountain. That's the man's approach.
Yeah, it is.
Got to top it.
Is that the best 1-2 combo? Well, I've never flown into Mammoth, so I guess maybe.
Yeah, I mean, are you counting Catalina?
Never been into Catalina, so
because that's pretty awesome.
yeah. So I haven't done that. So okay, it's just not.
I don't know, but
It's
there's
maybe
a
in the
lot
top
of
10.
airports in Southern California.
Yeah, I know. What about? Didn't you go into French Valley recently? Isn't that one kind of a fiasco?
I went. That was in my plan. I flew out there for a wedding. It was just busy. It wasn't it wasn't anything.
Nothing too crazy.
Not a true
Okay.
fiasco. Today going into Monterey was a real fiasco. Let me tell you.
Yeah, give it to me.
We were number 2 leading the pack in the morning with the overcast, and it was vertical visibility of 100 feet and RVR super low and fog, yada yada, and supposed to burn off at 11 o'clock. It goes from a quarter mile and 200 feet or whatever the forecast was to at 11 o'clock 6 miles and few at 800 or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we're getting there at like 10, and we depart. I'm like, oh, it'll burn off, yeah. And so we check the we get close. It's sure enough, it's at a mile of visibility and overcast at 200, right? So we say no problem, and so I ask as we're descending, I'm like, are we leading the pack into Monterey? He goes, no, you're number 2. You're following a Gulfstream. So we hear it's this G600 in front of us, and he comes down and he misses, and the guy's like, well, say the reason for your missed approach. And well, we didn't see the runway. I'm like, oh, this doesn't look promising.
Here we go.
I'm assuming he has EVS too, and we don't have EVS installed. So we come down, and Christian hand flies. It's funny because just like the sim, because there's a NOTAM. I don't know if you remember, it's been like this for 100 years. It used to be on the chart that you couldn't fly it coupled, right? Because it does, the glide slope and localize do some funky stuff when you're out there, right? Yeah. And now it's in a NOTAM. You have to hand fly it. So it's just like the sim, on the final vector. Okay, take off, disconnect the autopilot for this one. So
Right.
we fly down. We get to minimums. It's just thick, dude. This just thick stratus. You couldn't see. It never saw anything. Just white. And so we execute the mist. Hand flown, Christian, like a man. And we go and we hear the G600. And he just the missed approach takes you to the Salinas VOR to hold, right? So he's holding, and I'm like, this is thick, dude. Like this ain't gonna come up in another 20 minutes. I'm like, this is gonna be a minute. So I tell the guy we're all in the mist to Salinas. We're like, hey, we're gonna go ahead and divert to Salinas. And so we get over there, and I'm setting up the approach, and all of a sudden it's clear. We get cleared for the visual approach. We land. Homeboy in the 600 is just spinning. Just cookies overhead for over an hour, dude. So we're sitting on the ground. We got the APU running. I call our passengers. I'm like, hey, we didn't make it in, but by the time you get a car and get here, it's up to you.
Yeah.
I don't care. You come to me, I'll come to you. I can't give you a reliable time when I can be there. I think in an hour, but I don't know. And he's like, oh, we'll just wait here. So we're listening to NorCal on the radio. We're sitting in this little ramp. We're like parked like on the tie downs in Salinas. It's kind of a mess. And
Park in the city ramp. You got to innovate.
We got to innovate. You got to avoid that ramp fee.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. We paid the ramp fee, but so we're just watching on FlightAware, homeboy spinning, and we're listening on NorCal, and then we see this PC-12 come in, right? And we're following him, and he's like the first guy to execute the approach, and we see him, and as soon as he could tell, he touches down on like open ADS-B. I'm like, all right, we're ready to go. Get us a time for Monterey. And so then we hear the guy in the G600. Oh yeah, we'll give it a shot. So he goes, and then they give us a 30-minute time window, like release time, 30 minutes out. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, dude. It's like 10 miles over there. And anyway, long story short, the G600 lands, and then they got us earlier time because he goes, oh, it sounds like people are getting into Monterey. We're like, yeah, dude, it's old news. So we blast off, and you fly it down to right to minimums again and land.
And then you made it in, and then you were telling me a crazy story from a week or two ago on another approach you guys are doing with a thunderstorm on the ILS.
Oh, dude. Yeah, this is an interesting one. So we're flying into Kalispell, Montana, right?
Yeah.
And the tower there, it has a tower, but it's been NOTAMed out for staffing. So it's just during the busiest time of the year in Kalispell, Montana, they just shut the tower down for 10
Due to
days. I don't
COVID.
even understand because, yeah, right. And so it's a mess, dude. The airlines, a bunch of corporate traffic, center's overwhelmed and they're slowing you. So we're getting delay vectors. We're slow as as much as practical. And there's like weather. And so we finally get like, we're literally, she's just vectoring us out in Nowheresville, right? And clears us direct to the fix that's like, the initial fix. And we come in and I'm like, oh, and so finally we didn't actually get a good look until we kind of aligned up with the runway, because it was like probably a 60-degree, to turn to the final approach course. And so we turn the final approach course out there and we get a couple sweeps of the radar and we're like, oh my God, like that might be a ground return, dude, because it's a big red blob between us right on the final approach course in the runway. And we continue, so we're inbound and I'm like, and we have like the 3D volumetric radar. It was kind of like praying it was a ground return, but it's not, because it's smarter than that. And I'm like, no, dude. And we kind of pop out of the clouds and just see this rain shaft from hell, right? Just right on the front. And we're on the approach, right? And center's being bombarded with calls. You can't even get a word in. It's like, what do you do? And I'm like, all right. I'm like, we're going to have to, we can't just execute the miss, because that takes you through the thunderstorm, right?
Right.
And we have this clear. And I'm like, dude, we got to break it off. And Flathead Lake, like, it's big, big, huge lake to the right, and we can see. And so I'm like, yeah, screw this. So we bust a right and just start climbing off the approach. Like, what do you do in that situation? Like, I mean, there's only one choice, but that's not a IFR maneuver to just break off over a lake. Like, but that's what we did. And so we finally get a word in the center. She's like, oh, climb and maintain 9,000 and just like, go, what do you want to do now? And I'm like, oh. So I'm like, well, send us back over to GOGS, which is that fix. And can we hold there? Because then every time we're inbound, we can paint it with the radar,
get a
right?
Sweep. Yeah.
And as soon as it's gone, we can just bang in. So we go to GOGS and I'm doing the bingo fuel calculation. I'm checking the weather in Missoula and yada, yada. And it's not great there either. And, Montana's not a real dense state. I don't know if you've ever been there, but there's not, there's not a million airports right around. So we hold on GOGS and every inbound turn, I can see it's moving, right? And then I'm looking, I'm like, dude, we're getting close here on gas. And I'm telling, we're like, hey, let's go. I think one more turn of the hold. Tell her in the next inbound turn, we'd like to proceed inbound for the approach, because I think it'll be at the rate it's moving off. I think we'll be in good shape. So while Christian's waiting to get a word in edgewise, I hear American Airlines gets cleared for the RMP approach to the opposite direction. There's only one approach to the opposite. It's a radius to fix RMP.
Oh yeah,
approach, which we can't do because there's terrain. So homeboy's out of like 16,000 feet, so he's not close. Gets cleared, and we're like, we're ready to go inbound. She's like, oh, well, I already cleared American. I'm like, well, we're out of gas. Like, so anyway, American flies, and she's like, okay. I'm like, look, we got one more turn in the hold, then we got to go. Like, we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And so she's like, okay. So she couldn't clear us for the approach, but she clears us inbound from GOGS to like the next intersection. And then she like kind of found a workaround, and by the time American got close enough where then we could go inbound, and it was the whole thing. And we landed like, we had plenty of gas, but right at our bingo fuel to divert. So
right, jeez,
I know it's been a lot lately.
That's good, but see, that's the kind of stuff, especially when you're flying with folks with less experience. That's the kind of things you need to see. Yeah. And you have to like adapt, because there isn't that like textbook answer of like, what should we do here? And you have to be able to understand, like, how do you manage a situation here where you're under pressure? And so that was probably pretty good.
Yeah, it's been really good experience, like for Christian, as the lesser experienced dude, because that's why time in the seat is so important, because there's some stuff you just can't train for that just happens, and sometimes you have to learn from the more experienced person, and I don't know. Yeah, we've had a jam-packed month.
Yeah, that's good. And that's the kinds of things that, when you're starting out, you'll see at a regional airline or like a fractional or something,
right.
That you've just got to like have reps.
It's harder to do in corporate because you just don't get the reps. And most of the time, people in corporate are flying to places that are nice that time of year.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Except for
like
skiing.
you just so few shoot approaches that you actually shoot,
So
It's good. Good.
That's it.
Good work training up the next generation there. I've never really run into that situation where you're like, it's in the middle of the approach. So like, what do you do?
If you're like if you're an IMC, that would have been a really different deal.
Yeah. And you're in a mountainous area.
Yeah, right. That would have been. I thought about that after. I'm like, man, that could have been. And it's just a weird set of circumstances because you didn't get a chance to paint that direction until you were like on the approach, cleared for the approach. Like, because that's when you turn, because we were at such a sharp angle. It was just so, and we had, we have XM weather, we have all these resources, but still, like that real time stuff that's moving fast, an isolated cell that's just dumping like that, like, and that would have been a mess. So
that's why you got to innovate.
That's right. We innovated, busted out over out the Flathead Valley.
Love it. Good stuff. Okay. I think that's a good place to wrap. I mean, it's after 9. I feel like we've gotten as much as we can get out of you.
Listen,
we're living on borrowed time right now.
I know.
You're leaving on vacation for a couple weeks. We're doing the best we can this summer.
You know what I am flying on though tomorrow night? Embarrassed to be mildly excited about is the A350.
Oh, I've never been on one.
Yeah, me neither.
This is who? Air France?
British Airways.
Oh, cool.
Right?
That's going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. We'll get a selfie of you. All right, now, this is going to be great, Max. I can't wait. Can you have your lovely wife get a video of you just going up to the cockpit just to tell the guys if they need anything, you're in the back? You're there. You're licensed if the need arises.
Yeah, because there won't be enough. Not only is there not 2 pilots, there's probably it's 10 hours, so whatever.
Hey guys,
only 3. Hey guys, just in case though, in case you all get the fish tonight.
I'm back here. Yeah, I got this.
Yeah, we'll not do that. I'll wait till the flight attendant makes the announcement on the PA.
Yeah, that's fine. Did you see that? Oh, did I send you the comedy clip? This stand-up comedian did such a funny stand-up. He's like, I was flying on Spirit the other day, and he's like, I knew I was in trouble because there was a medical emergency. And the flight attendant came over to the PA, and she goes, ladies and gentlemen, are there any doctors on board? And the guy's like, no, there's no doctors on board. We're on Spirit Airlines. No doctors are flying on Spirit. And then
maybe
like,
a resident.
He's like, and then a little bit later, she goes, are there any nurses on board? He's like, no, there's no nurses on board either. No one in the healthcare profession is
Are there any factory workers on board?
It was so funny. He's like, we found some girl that was a nurse for Halloween 3 years ago.
We found some dude that does tattoos. That's the closest we got.
That's as good as we could get. We're on Spirit.
I
laugh. Yeah, I can't remember if I sent that to you or not, but I thought that was really funny. There's no doctors here.
We found an esthetician on board.
Yeah.
She does Botox. Does that help?
Oh my God, that was good. Shout out to Spirit Airlines. We love you.
Respect.
Okay, that is going to do it until the next
it.
episode. We don't know when that's going to be, but hang with us. We'll make it through here.
Once
we get to
got
August,
a few in the can.
We're working.
Come on,
we're working in the right direction.
Nobody's here. Yeah. We're working hard. We're grinding them out.
That's right. Well, until summer vacation is over, remember,
flexibility is the key to breaking off approach that's unable to be completed.
Just request the lake visual, the lake break off,
the PRM breakout maneuver over the lake. All right, I gotta get out of this.
All right, talk to you guys later.
The statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.